Hey guys, so this is a video here for all you guys that are already my followers. It's just a little bit about my life and how it's been up till now. Um, I've posted a bunch of videos about me reading aloud from my books or my how I do my nighttime routines, my daytime med routines, a history about my illnesses. This video is kind of for all of my already followers, and it's about just my life journey. My psychiatric symptoms began showing up around age 5. I started hearing two men's voices. One of them was a man named Clyde, and the other one was a man named Node. They were really loud and really frightening, and they spoke in hisses and cackles with spooky laughs. Kind of like Bellingham in the book Was I Ever Normal and the Bad Man in Saving Destiny. Just in their case, those were each just one. In my case, there was two of them. There was Clyde, and then there was Node. They were really similar. They would talk to each other and they would talk to me, and it would really freak me out, especially when they started and I was 5 years old. Then there was the narrator. In the book Was I Ever Normal, I called the narrator the narrator. In the book Saving Destiny, I called the narrator the storyteller. The narrator talked about what I was doing while I was doing it, kind of like the voiceover from George of the Jungle. I can't remember if it's the cartoon from George of the Jungle that has that narrator that gets involved, or if it's the real person one, but it's one of them. I just can't remember which it is. But there's an involved narrator in one of them, and that's kind of like what the narrator was for me. For me, I also heard the chorus, which was a bunch of indistinguishable voices, and they would yell, whisper, or laugh in unison. And as a little kindergartner, that would really creep me out because I wouldn't know what to do about it. But then there was also the white lady. She had one blue eye and one green eye, long red hair, and this gorgeous white gown. And I found her soothing. She was kind of like Tara in Was I Ever Normal. I never spoke much about the voices as a young child because I just figured they were my imaginary friends. I thought that's what people talked about when they said they had imaginary friends. By the time I was 8, I was starting to realize that they were more than just imaginary friends, but I was too scared to say anything about them and get locked up in a psych hospital. I used to read a lot of historical fiction back then. That was my favorite kind of reading when I was like a little kid in elementary school. And I imagined the psych hospital as an outdated early 20th century state mental institution. So I was really turned off wanting to say anything about them. Also, at age 8, I got really into writing. And I think that's what really saved me from completely losing it right then and there. I also got into therapy at age 8. My parents put me in therapy. It was family therapy. And I talk about that a little in some of my books, how I played with the dollhouses and stuff. And she talked to my parents, and I don't know what it accomplished, but I think my parents got something out of it. I don't know if I did. In the 3rd grade, our teacher had us start doing journal time. I didn't know what to write, so instead of journaling about my life, that was by then pretty horrific and not something I wanted my teacher reading, I started writing my first novel. And I based it off the American Girl doll series books that I used to love so much at that age. I had the American Girl doll Samantha, who was from 1904, and she was my favorite American Girl doll. And then I had the Build Your Own American Girl doll, and I named her Ariel because my middle name is Ariel, and I loved her too. The main character in the novel I wrote for my 3rd grade teacher was a French girl named Elena, who was sent over from France to live with her grandmother in 1904. By the end of the school year, the book was 88 pages long in my notebook and complete. Everyone in my life was amazed by my ability to write an 88-page novel that was actually fairly interesting at the age of 8. At the same time, I began feeling too full to eat lunch and snacks, and was having trouble standing up for longer than about 10 minutes. By the time I was 9 at my doctor's office, I'd grown an inch but lost weight, and everyone was getting concerned. By age 10, anything I put in my body, I vomited back out, or I would just be too nauseous to even try to eat. I was losing weight really fast, and I stopped growing. My pediatrician pushed on my stomach in a few places. She took an x-ray. The x-ray showed constipation. She decided the constipation maybe was a problem. She ordered a laxative. When the laxative didn't work, she declared the problem was that I had an eating disorder. And then I was forced to endure hell when I passed out in an elevator from dehydration and malnutrition. And they gave me an NG tube, which is a tube that goes in through your nose into your stomach to feed you. It did stabilize my vitals and labs, and so they sent me to a psych unit where they had rules up the wazoo and treated me like a behavior problem. I still couldn't eat for them, obviously, and was in so much pain and nausea that I could barely move. They would bring me these big trays of food and make me sit in front of them for 45 minutes. And then, when I didn't eat the tray, they'd bring me a Pediasure and make me sit in front of that for another half hour. And then finally, they'd let me go. And so then they decided I had an anxiety disorder because I'd get all anxious sitting in front of all those trays of food and Pediasure. So they put my 10-year-old self on a kiddie dose of Klonopin. Eventually, all the tube feed going in my stomach caused something called a Visor, which is a mass of hard, undigestible fibers. I didn't have an eating disorder. I had gastroparesis, and my stomach couldn't handle the tube feeds, so they'd all congealed inside me and formed an undigestible mass. The Visor blocked off my intestine, causing a bowel obstruction, and then my bowel perforated. Luckily, my favorite nurse was on duty and realized something was off with me enough to get me out of my room to take my vital signs, and then race me back over to the medical side of the children's hospital. My parents had to give verbal permission over the phone while I was being rushed into emergency surgery to save my life while they removed 2.5 inches of dead bowel and cleaned out my abdomen from the perforation. It was filled with nasty bacteria that literally would have killed me if it had been left any longer. Once they realized about the Visor, they ran more tests on me and discovered I had gastroparesis. The NG tube was replaced with an even thicker one that was kept to wall suction for 5 days to treat the obstruction. Before that was switched to an NJ tube that I went home on. An NJ tube is similar to an NG tube in that it goes through your nose and down your back of your throat, but the NJ tube goes all the way into the middle of your intestines and skips over your stomach. My stomach was paralyzed from the gastroparesis. At that point, my intestines still worked a little bit. Once home, the problems didn't stop. I had a wire of negative energy running through me, and a whole bunch of command hallucinations in my head. My parents basically had to turn our house into a psych unit, with me as their only patient on 2-to-1s for 6 weeks. They would have to hold me down on the bed to prevent me from hurting myself. They had to nail all of the second-floor windows shut and make me sleep on a mattress on the floor of their room. Finally, they brought me to a different psychiatric hospital. That hospital realized that the Klonopin was what was causing all the problems. Klonopin can cause severe agitation and a paradoxical reaction in kids that haven't hit puberty yet. The second hospital took me off the Klonopin and put me on Thorazine, an old-school antipsychotic, and I was immediately calmed. From then on, I bounced in and out of psych hospitals and medical hospitals for most of my childhood and adolescence. My physical health got way worse. My heart would beat too fast and in abnormal rhythms. My blood pressure would be too low. My kidneys weren't working right. I was having breathing issues. I developed severe anemia and low potassium and magnesium. I stopped being able to pee and needed to use catheters. On and off, I would need NJ feeding tubes that went from my nose to my jejunum, the middle of my small intestine. I needed a wheelchair some of the time. I had issues with temperature regulation. My pupils always stayed dilated. I passed out a lot. And then, at age 16, I went into residential treatment, where they only made things worse. They missed the fact that the Lamictal the psychiatrist put me on to stabilize my mood caused me to develop a rash that turned into burns and liver damage and severe anemia and hospitalized me. It was called Stephen-Johnson syndrome. It was a well-known side effect of the Lamictal, and they completely and totally missed it. As soon as my mom got me to a real doctor, I was hospitalized and the situation was fixed. But it took me over a year to fully recover. They treated me like a behavior problem when really I was dealing with what was a biologically based chemical imbalance in my brain, combined with a bunch of medical conditions and a few bad habits. I needed gentle, loving reinforcement to help me break. At age 18, I was discharged from the residential treatment center, but then relapsed with my schizoaffective disorder and ended up in the state, getting committed to a state hospital, where I was put on Clozaril that changed my life around. That was my last psychiatric hospitalization I ever had, except for a quick one on a medical psych floor at age 23, and a less than 24-hour one at a psych unit when I was 25. At age 21, I developed a brain tumor. I got the brain tumor removed at age 22. 3 weeks later, I had to be life-flighted to Mass General Hospital for the blamed bleed. At age 23, I began dealing with severe weight loss. I no longer had the NJ tube. They had put another one in, but when it clogged, they refused to replace it. My GI doctor finally told my mom she had two choices: to take me to Mass General's ER or watch me die. At Mass General's ER, my heart was in a dangerous rhythm. My potassium and magnesium were both critically low. I was 67 pounds at 4'10", and I was in danger of dying. I was hooked up with the complex care team, who promised me that they would find one diagnosis that tied everything together. After a 5-month-long stay, I learned that I had autoimmune-mediated small fiber autonomic polyneuropathy, and that I had one of the worst, most severe cases they had ever seen. I went home with a GJ tube, a portacath, oxygen, and a wheelchair. Within a year, I had another 2-month-long hospitalization. My parents kicked me out of the house. They said they wanted their own space. I was all grown up now. They didn't want their house turned into a hospital. And it was too painful to look at me the way I was now. They basically knew I was dying and wanted to remember the healthy Becca, not the Becca I was now. After that hospitalization, I was transferred to a nursing home. I stayed there 6 months before I had enough and got myself into the only assisted living I could find that took people under age 55. I moved in, and I met the love of my life, Jeff Hartford. He had been only living there a few weeks before I got there, but you would have thought he owned the place by the way he knew everyone, everything, and every detail. We lived together a year and a half before we made arrangements for nursing and PCA care in our own apartment. We lived in our own apartment together for 5 years before he passed from his battle with cancer and liver failure. He gave me the best 6.5 years of my life. Now I'm living in the apartment alone, but I'm sicker than ever. I have 66 hours of nursing care a week, and then I have PCAs the rest of the time. I'm facing a new diagnosis, early onset multiple system atrophy. It's a form of dysautonomia, but it's the most severe form. It's terminal. With the multiple system atrophy, the average lifespan is anywhere from 2 to 10 years after diagnosis. I was diagnosed in 2018. It is now 2021, almost 2022 in another month. I'm a ticking time bomb. Most people aren't diagnosed until their 50s or so, but I am apparently a medical jinx. I write my books to distract myself from negative thinking and to spread awareness. The last few books I just finished are more about my mental health issues, but the memoir that I'm currently working on is more centered around my medical issues, and it's closer to my life now. I want to get my work out there. I want to offer awareness, compassion, and understanding to caregivers, the medical community, and the general public. And I want to offer hope, validation, and courage to others who are going through what I am going through. And I want my writing to make a mark on this world so that my brief stay on Earth will have meant something. I want to immortalize myself with my writing. And that is what I want to do. Thanks, guys, for listening. Love you guys so much. Take care. Alright. Love all you followers. Keep following, subscribe to my channel, comment. Love you guys so much. Bye.